Okay, so let's take a look at this in-class exercise, bubble T. I'm going to go through the solution, things like the image that you see here. Those things, of course, you can download it. You can just look for an image called bubble T in Google, and then you can download it and use it. So we'll go through the structure of the server and also how the server works. The steps that we have to do are listed near the top here. So these are the things that we have to do. The first thing is to set up a node project. So how do you do that? That is npm init. After having created a folder somewhere called bubble T, then if you haven't already done so, you have to install nodemon somewhere. In this example here, I'm saying install it globally, but if you install it locally, that also will work. So I'm assuming that you have done these things. After that, let's set up a web server file, server.js. I have already launched it using nodemon so that if I modify my server.js, it will automatically relaunch. That is fine. So the first thing that I have in this server.js is importing Express. So I say require Express. Notice that I'm not using / because Express is not my package, it's not my module, so it's not in the current folder. It is somewhere. Actually, you can see where it is just by hovering over it. Node.js knows how to import it, where to import it from, so I don't have to worry about it. So it's not the full path name, it's just the name of the package. So that comes, remember, when you say require, whatever has been defined as module.exports inside that express.js file will come to you as an object here. So you have that object, and it turns out that is actually a function object. Then I'm also importing path, and this is actually a built-in package in node.js. After that, since express that I got here is a function object, I can just run it. What it returns is actually a server. It's an express server. Then I can start messing with it. The first thing I will do is to set it up such that when something is posted, I can actually get the information posted in request.body something. Request body is an object. The properties will be whatever the user has sent in a form with method equal to post. So you need this. If you don't have that, then things posted you will have no access to. So as you have seen before, the full structure of this thing is mounting that middleware here. This is the way you saw it. So it turns out that even if you don't give the first argument, it will work fine. And it also turns out that even if you don't have this inside, the extended true, that is an object with property extended equal to true, even if you don't have it, this will actually work. But let's have it this way because this is the way we learned. So now it is set up so that anything is posted to this server, you will have access to through request.body inside one post route. The next thing is to set it up such that static files can be served. So starting from here, express.static is the one that will actually serve static files. That takes a path as an argument, but the path public is in the current folder. Current folder is __ did name, that is a magic variable defining or containing the location of the current file being server.js. So that is that. And path.join is the one that you have to use. As you know, in Unix or Mac OS, the full name of a paths will have delimiters that are slashes. In Windows, it will be backslashes, which will have to be escaped, which means //. So since we don't know where you will be running it, you have to use something that will work for both, and such a facility is given in this path module that you imported. This is in Node.js system-wide. So that's that. So here the output of path.join, this thing is the full path name of the public folder, which I have under bubble T solution, in this case public. So once this thing is given, I can actually access anything that's in public. Let's verify this at this point. In public, I have image and I have a puppy there. So let's try accessing that. Let me just save this because I made one tiny modification here. The server restarted. Very good. I go here, then in public, which is the root of my static file, so I don't have to say public. Under image, I have a puppy. So let's load that. So it comes to me, and that works completely fine. Again, I'm not giving you the puppy, the picture of the puppy. You can just download it from Google. You don't need me. Right, so I know that this thing is working. Just to make sure that that thing is the one that is actually serving, let's try commenting that out, save it, restart it. Then let's go here and reload it. Obviously, it's not working. So we know for sure that our static, express.static statement is the one that is actually serving it. Okay. Uncommented it, saved it, reloaded it, puppy is back. Aren't you happy? Right, now let's start handling GET requests. So this is basically setting a route for slash. So when you say slash, somebody has to handle that. It's a get request. So I'm going to delegate that handling to a function called f. Where is my f? That is right here. That is my f. F will take request and response as arguments, as an arrow function, and inside the response I will send a string that says hello from the server. First, name function, because I'm naming it as f, so it's a name function that is handling that request. So let's see that in action. So save this and I say slash. Actually, even if you don't say slash is the default, so that's fine. Hello from the Express server, first name server. Now if you look carefully in my server.js at this point, I have one more server.get for slash, that is to redirect to home. This guy is not hit at all because server started from the top, server.js started from the top when I was looking for this. The first time it could handle it, it handled it and then returned. So this guy was not hit. If you don't believe me, I just have to comment this out and reload this. At this point, what's happening is actually it did not see this one because it's a comment. Then it kept looking for slash. It saw that, and then there I'm saying response is a redirect to slash home, and slash home I know how to handle because I have static files being served from public. So inside public I have home, and that's the one that's being shown. So home.html, that's what came to you. So now that we understand that, let's uncomment this, save it, see it once more there. So that is the first attempt, a named function. Then let me comment that out, and then let's do a second attempt. Rather, let's look at it carefully. Now what I'm saying is that f is this function that is just an assignment. Oh, by the way, you see that I'm assigning it as a const. That basically plays the same role as a let. It's just that I'm not planning to overwrite that memory location, so it's okay to call it that. Use let or const. Const is probably more appropriate here. So const is not only for semantically constant stuff in JavaScript, it's also for things that you know will not change in your program. So it's a variable that you're not planning to change. So this is just an arrow function from here to here. So instead of typing in f, I can actually type that in there directly. In other words, instead of doing that, I could just say this. So request response arguments arrow function doing that. So it's almost identical to that, except that I put a tag second so that you can see this in action. So now save this, reload this. So now it is a second way in which I'm handling it. It's an arrow function. Now third, now we want to actually do something meaningful rather than just saying hello from the server. This is actually a server for a bubble tea shop after all. Let's actually send something that is more than just hello. So comment this out. From here to here, uncomment it. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Here I'm saying same arrow function, but the body is different. What I'm sending is actually a string which contains HTML tags. So it's actually an HTML string. So a bunch of things, navigation, like a menu, 4 links there, and then a header, then an image. Where will that come from? That will come from my public, because this is an image with a source image. So everything comes from my public. So image will also come from my public, and that's going to be this image. And then there's a paragraph. Again, I haven't given this to you. You can create this paragraph, for instance, by searching for it in Google or asking ChatGPT or whatever. The thing to remember here is actually, since this is a multi-line string, you have to use backtick. If you use normal quotation marks and then have a line breaks, that will make JavaScript very upset. All right, so now I have this. So if I reload this, I see the whole thing there. So welcome to Bubble Tea Bliss third. I had a tag, welcome to Bubble Tea Bliss third. So that's that. Now, to have such big strings inside server.js is a bit ugly, because if you have multiple pages that you want to handle, the server.js is going to become quite unwieldy. This is not very nice. So let's comment this out and do this differently. Our fourth attempt is going to be basically saying that if you get a request to slash, if that is your route, and get request to slash, then the response is just redirected to home.html. And what do I have in home.html? What I did was to just copy this much from here to here and place that in a file called home.html, which is right here, except that I added the HTML nonsense like HTML tag, head, etc. Not a big deal. So this was the third attempt, and the fourth attempt is actually the file. Save it. Now reload it. So the third will go away, and now it is actually coming from the file, as you can see from here. There's a redirection. So far so good. Now, I wanted to tell you one thing, that is regular expression. Regular expressions are pattern matching facilities that are built into JavaScript. So if you have something that looks like a string or a variable but delimited or terminated by slashes, that is a regular expression. And this regular expression actually means anything that contains an A. So if you're looking for something in server.get that contains an A, then say this. That's what this is saying. So anything that contains an A. So let's try this. After having saved it, if I say /AAA, that certainly contains an A. So that hits this route to get A. If I just say A, that also hits that. If I say CAB, A is there, that also hits that. So all those things will be handled by this. So regular expressions are quite powerful. This is just the mere tip of the iceberg that is regular expression. There's quite a bit more to it. I'm not going to teach you whatever I know about regular expressions. I know a fair bit, but what I know also is probably about 5% of what regular expressions can do. Right, so we're going to comment that out because regular expressions, being the powerful beasts that they are, might handle things that you don't want it to handle. Right, now I want to create a special route for post requests coming from login. So where will login come from? Login is a file here in my public. So let's look at that file. It's got some HTML nonsense here and there, but in the body, what it has is basically a form that says action is account login and method is post. So you have to kind of recreate this file on your own because I'm not going to give you anything at all. So you can pause the video here and type in this thing. To make it easier, maybe you don't need to have the label business there. Well, maybe you do the whole thing. Take a minute or so to type this in. Then let me open this and show this to you. If I just say localhost 8000 login.html, I will get that. How do I know that I will get it? Because that is being served by my static handler that I set up here. It's in public, it's a static file. So anything that starts with a slash, if the file is there in public, that will be served. So the file is there in login.html, that is served. Now, if I type in something and submit it, it has to be handled. So where is that going to be handled? That is going to be handled in account login. That is the route to which the post request will go. So I have to set up .post account login. Again, that will get request and response. Then I will unpack username. Where will username come from? I have to look at the login.html form. I have an input that is a text input, and the name of that input is just name, and that is the one that will contain the username. So I'll unpack that into my username here. The best practice might be to call this by the same name, username. In that case, of course, I have to do the same thing here. This also will have to be username. That should work. Now, in order to do this, if I just use the form as I see here, which is a kind of mistake that some of you at least will make, I have modified the form. I have to reload it. Otherwise, it will still be using the old form. See, it is still using the old form. Now, if I reload it and look at the source, Option Command U, then I'm using the new form, so I have to reload it. Otherwise, you will have an error. So I'm saying Bobby, password is not used. Let's say 123 and say login. So it is actually saying second route, welcome Bobby. Where is that coming from? So let's look at our server.js. In server.js, I have post account login. There I'm saying second route. What was my first route? First route was about. Oh, I didn't show you that. So let's show you that first. My first route is actually a route that I set up to handle a get request to about. So let's take a look at that one. So about first route, that says first route, hey, this is an awesome bubble tea. Now after that, we looked at the regular expression which came after the about. But about, as you know, contains an A, but that's okay in this case because it goes and hits this route first and then it doesn't look at anything else. But suppose I move this guy above the other one. Now when I say about, it'll probably go and hit this one first. Let's see that in action. Now it is going and hitting the regular expression. So the location of the regular expression is actually quite important. So most likely you will put all the regular expressions toward the end of the server.js because you want to handle all the special cases first. And if those cases are not handled, then you want to go and handle it by a regular expression. So that is just a teachable moment. Fine. So we did that. Then we looked at the second route, which is to handle account login. Now I have a third route, how to modify this guy if the method was get. So if the method is get, I have to use the same thing, except that it'll be get. Okay. And when you use get, it's not body, but query. That is the thing that you have to keep in mind. So let's do this. So let's go to this guy and make this method get. All right. Now it's going to come and hit this guy here, not this one because it's not a post request, it's a get request, and it's going to come and hit this guy, and it's going to unpack the username this time from query. Remember, I changed the name of the field to username, so I should change that here also. And then it'll say third route, not the second route, but the third route. So go back here, reload it. Now we will see that the method is actually get and Bobby123 login. Now there is a problem here. Can you see the problem? I'm doing a get request to account login, but where is it? It's actually a get request. I'm hoping to hit this one, but it got intercepted by this regular expression that I had before. That had an A there, account/login. Obviously has an A right there. So that got intercepted by my route that I had accidentally set up here, the regular expressions. So regular expressions can mess up your server quite a bit, so be careful. I'm going to fix it by just commenting that out. By right, I should just move it toward the end of the server.js body. So let me go back here, submit it again. Now it becomes third route. I had the comment right here. It hits the regular expression first. That's why I had the problem. Then I just had to comment it out. All right. Now I want to show you something else. What I want to do is to set up what we call a router. Those things will appear inside routes, which is a folder inside my bubble T. So let's see how that is done. So what I'm going to do is to say that I have a file called account.js. So it's inside routes, the current folder. So I have to give the full name there. Then I require it, and whatever I have set up as module.exports will come back to me in this account variable. And then I'm asking my server to use that object instead of my original individual route for anything that starts with /account. So let's take a look at account.js. So this, I understand, that is a bit complicated. Maybe you have to watch this a couple of times. So it's inside routes, it's account.js. It is similar to my server.js. So I have to require express again because it's a different file. There I get the express object. Here I don't use the express function. I use a method called express router. It actually constructs a router and puts that in my local variable called router. And instead of saying server.get, I say router.get and / So / here means because /account is what's going to be handled by accounts.js. So /account/ will be handled by this. /account/login, this guy /login will be handled by this route, which is a post route. And I set up one more register. The idea is that instead of having all these things inside your server.js, if you have this in the server.js and this also in the server.js, then register, account forgotten password, account edit profile, etc. All those things are logically something that pertain to the management of an account. So that probably belongs in one route. So that's the idea. So this is like encapsulating all the account related functionality in just one file and then using that as a route. So just require that. What you get back is actually the router, because the router is what I'm setting as module.exports, and that will come back to my server. And then I just use that as a middleware, mount it on account. That is complicated lingo, just to say that anything that starts with /account will be handled by that router. So anything that just says account / meaning account and nothing after that will be handled by this guy. Anything that says account login will be handled by /login, and so on. So this is the right way of doing it. That is how you set up a router. So now in order to see that this is actually being handled by this guy, we will probably need a message here. So let me just say router here. Okay. Now you can see that server.js, the nodemon, has actually restarted because it realizes that the moment you change anything inside the router, anywhere inside this folder, any program file like JS file, it has to restart. So it knows that, which is nice. You don't have to restart it yourself. Now let's go here. No need to reload this, just submit it. Okay, let me tell you why it did not work. What I did before this, kind of stupidly, is to change the method to get Then I'm delegating account/login to account, which is this file. There I have only a post method, no get method. Account related things should be posted. So this has to go back to post. And in that case, I really have to reload this. And then I have to say Bobby123. Then it says welcome router undefined. So the name was not defined. So what's the problem there? So let's take a look at that one. So what happened was it came here. It looked for request body name. Name is not the name of that field. Remember, we have changed that also. I'm going to pretend that all these things are actually teachable moments designed by me so that you can understand this. But this was actually a mistake. I had actually changed the name to username. But here I'm looking for name, so that has to change to username. Right, now go back, submit, now I get Bobby. Similarly, if I have a register.html here, that will probably post a register, account register, and that will be handled by this guy. So that's the idea. Now, I have a complicated file here called order.html. So let's take a look at that one. How would I see that? That will be order.html. So that's how you order your stuff. That's got quite a bit of things there. And if you look at the file here, you see that it's going to go to order process order, and the method is get. Now, how would I get order process order? I could in fact have a route right here that says server.get/order process order, and then I could have a request response, an arrow function that sets response sent. There I could just say order received. This will work, but the way I'm going to do that is by creating a router inside routes order.js and delegating all orders to that. But as you remember, if the route is actually defined before that, the first time the route is defined, that route will be used, and the second one will not be used at all. So in this case, I don't have to comment this out. I leave it like this, and in order, I know that is process order, and I'll just submit the guy here. Let's see if submission can happen. It says I have to fill in all these things, and that is not coming from the server, that is coming from the HTML file, because it says required. There's an attribute that says required. Whenever you have required, those things have to be filled out before it can be submitted. So that is from the client side. So let's have Manoj there, email, my email, select milk tea, sugar level 50%, ice, whatever that thing is, pearls, additional request, blah. Then I confirm, then place order, server.js 115. I made a mistake here. Teachable moment again. It's not RESP, it's actually RES. We use RES. Okay, so one extra letter made me panic a little bit. And I can imagine that if you make this kind of mistake in your lab test, you will probably panic a lot more and then might be tempted to delete everything and start over, etc. No, just debug it. Now go back here. Everything is as it has been selected, then place order, then order received, and that is coming from here. Now that's not the way I want to handle it. I want to comment that out, and I want to look at my route order.js, which is here, and that does quite a bit more. So here the get route is process order, but of course this comes after order because I'm saying order/anything, handle it by delegating it to my order object, which came from my router. So that is going to be, this is actually the same as having order process order in the server.js file. Now I unpack user. So it's looking at request query user. Query is the thing to look at because we are looking at order.html. Order.html. There I have user right here. That is the name of the field. Okay, so it's a get form. You see it, get form. Request.query is the object to look at, and the property to look at is user. And well, I'm basically saying use that if that is not there, if that is false, that is undefined. In that case, use just empty string and then trim it. So if the user happens to be Manoj space, then this guy will be Manoj space, and that will be trimmed to just Manoj. If this guy is not defined at all, in that case, just use empty string and then trim it. Email, same thing. Tea, sugar, all those things, same idea. If it is there, use it. Otherwise, use empty string. All right. Now this thing is interesting. This is a toppings raw. So in order.html, there is a field called toppings. Here, toppings here is a checkbox. So checkbox, as you remember, the user might select none at all, in which case the corresponding request.query.toppings will be undefined, so that has to be handled. He might select just one, in which case request.query.toppings will be just one value as a string, and he might select two, and in which case it might be an array. So that is a bit hard to handle. So let's look at the way it is handled. By the way, this thing was created by ChatGPT. I didn't actually write it, but this is probably the way I would have written if I had been a little bit less lazy. Right, so I'm taking the raw input that came from toppings. This, as I know, this can be maybe undefined or a string, or it can be an array of strings. So these are the three possibilities. So the first thing it's saying is that if it is undefined, if that is true, then make it an empty string. If that is false, then check if this thing is an array. If it is an array, which means I have selected multiple things, just keep it as it is. Otherwise, this is going to be just a string, in which case put that in an array. So after this, what's going to happen is that this guy, toppings, is going to be, it's going to be an empty array, or an array with just one string, or an array with several strings. So it's going to be an array, which is nice. We kind of standardized that raw variable, which could be three different things, into just one type array, which is nice. Then I'm creating an errors array, and if the user name is empty, then say username is required, email is empty, then email is required, etc. Now, one thing to kind of wonder at this point is that you're actually saying that username is required, then why do you have to actually do the server-side validation again? That is because of this. Look at the URL here. Look at the URL. So this is the URL that is created by clicking on the submit button. And once somebody sees this URL, he doesn't have to go through your form to get to your route that handles it. He can actually use this guy and say Manoji, instead of Manoji, can actually give empty string. That will actually go through. It will actually bypass the requirement that you have in the form, because you're not going through the form to create the URL. So that's the reason why server-side validation is important. Right. Now let's go back here, place the order. Now order is received, and it's actually creating a table. Where is that being done? If there are no errors, okay, if email verification is there, the server-side validation. This is ChatGPT magic, and some more server-side validations. You have to understand these things or something equivalent. Finally, if there are errors, then it basically shows the errors and then gives you a way in which you can go back. Otherwise, it translates milk tea to classic milk tea, etc. Some friendly labels and capitalization, etc. And then it's actually sending a response, which is a full HTML string here. And there it has a table with a heading that says order received, table, call span to customer, there, username, etc. And notice that it's actually doing an escape HTML, which is a good idea because it's something that is coming from a form. Never trust the world. The universe is a nasty place, and it might actually try to send you naughty things. So you have to escape everything. Right. So that's what it is doing. So it's a complicated route handling this order, but unfortunately for you, I'm not going to send you this one because I would like you to actually practice the validation to the extent you can. So that brings us to the end of this bubble tea exercise, as we did it in week number 4. We did a little bit more in week number 5 using EJS, the template engine. So that will be the next video.